Greetings, Illumineers! We went to UK Games Expo to talk to designer Ryan Miller about Disney Lorcana, and we asked the users of BoardGame Geek what they would like to know. Here are those questions and answers.
Adonis Torres says, I'd love to know how the development of these song actions came to be.
We were talking about, so we had all these goals for designing the game, and we were talking about, Steve and I were talking about, like, what do we want to see from a Disney standpoint? And I don't know who said it, but one of us said, well, we have to have songs somehow. How can we have songs? And we came up with all these ideas, all these crazy things, and a lot of them were too forced. They were just too either complex or they're just kind of forced, and somehow this idea of, like, what if you could have a character sing a song? Okay, well, how would that work, right? And it kind of grew from that, right? We were like, oh, you could have song cards that you have to use your characters to play. And that was a really great idea, but it was really hard to put in your deck. Because using your characters to play it can be dangerous, right? It makes them vulnerable to being challenged, and you can't, when you use them to play it, you can't use them to quest or to... So that's when the idea of, like, what if we just converge them with action cards? So you choose. You're gonna pay the ink, or you can have someone sing it for you, and it just crystallized at that point. Once we came to that point, it was like, oh my gosh, that's great. And it's absolutely one of my favorite parts of the game, because when you see a room full of people playing Lorcana, you will periodically hear people sing these songs, because it's almost impossible to play one of these cards without singing a line or two from the song itself. So.
William Burgos asks, what's your favorite player count for playing in multiplayer?
I think 4 is my favorite. We've played up to 6 for testing purposes, and it plays just fine. But of course, the longer it takes to get back to your turn. I like 4 quite a bit, though. I think it adds. Any multiplayer game is going to have, like, the diplomacy aspect to it as well, right? Like, oh, I'm not a threat, okay, yeah, Ed's the threat, not me, right? And I think the more players that you add, the more of that aspect, which is fine. But in the games I've played, 4 players seems to really click.
Cool. Ben Michael says, I'd love to know which one of the design team is a Keyforge player and how that game has influenced the development of Lorcana.
So it may surprise you to know I have never played Keyforge. I did look at the rules when it came out, because obviously it's a fascinating system. I was actually surprised to learn that we had similarities to Keyforge. I had no idea. So yeah, and I can't speak for Steve. I'm sure he played it once or twice. But there was never a point, at least that I can recall, where we're like, oh, that thing from Keyforge, let's do that. It was just, I think, a case of parallel design, right? We just kind of had a similar idea.
Chris Hill says, how much involvement does Disney have in deciding what's in or out? Do you just have to okay the individual properties, or do they need to sign off on all aspects of the card?
We don't talk about, I can't talk about that, unfortunately. Sorry. Yeah,
cool.
those kind of, like, really intricate, like, systemic things, we just behind the curtain.